Yes, hello everybody. Anybody who is watching out there, this is the Google Hangout in pit lane, the victory lap, and a bit of a conversation as we had last week about all matters motorsport. Joining us this week, just fresh back from the 6 hours of Fuji from E-Racing Magazine, is Trent Price. G'day, Trent.
Yeah, right.
And we've also got from ABC Grandstand's Box of Neutrals, the Formula One program, Rob James. Welcome, Rob.
Thank you very much, Fred. I'm fresh off from the 6 minute car ride from South Bank back to my place, so I'm all recovered from that grueling event in Russia.
Well, the fact that you did it in 6 minutes is something of a because we should point out you live about 64 kilometres away, so you've actually done very well and broken several speed records as well as several laws as well. And also joining us once again from Formula Ford is Andrew Sill. G'day, Andrew. How are you?
How you going, Brett? And don't forget, I've got Lulu here as well.
Lulu, yes, our celebrity dog. Our celebrity dog. Well, let's kick it off. We saw Bathurst on the weekend. Can anybody? Well, I suppose Trent was sort of otherwise engaged. It was so frustrating to have the Fuji 6 hour on the same weekend as Bathurst because I missed a lot of the Fuji 6 hour. But we'll start with Rob because he definitely saw most of it, if not the important part, which was the last. Rob, was that about the best finish you've ever seen to a race?
Yeah, well, I saw most of the race, but to be perfectly honest, I was more distracted by some sort of program called The Big Adventure, apparently happening soon on Channel 7. Not sure if you're aware of it, Brett, or
Where did you find that out? How did you?
I got no idea. It was I think it was subliminal advertising they had this year over at Bathurst. It was quite bizarre.
It must have been very subtle because I missed it completely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to editorialise, but man, if Malcolm Turnbull's switching off Channel 31, and yet the alternative is half or an hour's worth of coverage on commercial television of essentially people digging sand at the beach to try and find some cash, then man, we're in a sorry state. But back on to Bathurst.
It's a good beach, though.
Sorry, that was quite remarkable. I loved it. It was everything sort of happened we were actually at the ABC at the time. When everything sort of hit over at Bathurst. I mean, I think we got into the studio doing some pre-records as Shane Van Gisbergen struggled to get off from pit lane with a starter motor issue, and that was just like, well, what's going on here? And then Lowndes and Winterbottom, and then Paul Morris winning the Bathurst 1000 with Chaz Mostert. Chaz is a great kid. He's a young, fast charger. He's had a difficult season so far this year, but Paul Morris, wow. I still cannot comprehend. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. I think in an era where there's so much focus on driver development, athletic performance, and you got to eat the right stuff. You can't eat carbs and all sorts of stuff. Paul Morris, essentially just a wine entrepreneur, took out the Bathurst 1000, one of the biggest prizes in Australian motorsport. I think it's a wonderful story of inspiration. I really do.
Well, let's not forget the son of a wine entrepreneur. I mean, that's the main thing. But they pointed that out on Sports Today on 3AW as well. They sort of said, how wonderful it was to see that, somebody who was perhaps filling out his driver suit a bit more than regular. Andrew, you've seen a few Bathursts as well. What did you think of it all?
It was very, very interesting. I got glimpses of it. I thought when they said there's going to be a 20-minute break to repair the track, coming from a family that was involved in road building, there was no way it was going to be 20 minutes, especially if they had the local council workers there. You'd have to have a few standing by with their shovels just in case and so on. But it was like, is this race ever going to start? And I was actually down the coast and had to come back to Melbourne. I thought I'd missed the end, the usual end of Bathurst, and got home and was surprised it was still going, and got the last 20 laps, which is the last 20 laps you wanted to see. But it was an interesting one. I think they got a bit of negative publicity, which wasn't that great. But I think at the end, it just amazes me how, at least for the past 3-4 years, that last hour of Bathurst has been amazing to watch. It's been just absolutely compelling viewing. So, and well done to Chaz. I thought he did a good job. What about Shane Van Gisbergen? Newton's clutchy. He stalled it in the pit lane, and
Yeah, I think it shows the pressure that they're under at that time. I mean, he's done that. He's left the pits without any problems 100 times, and then suddenly, under the pressure of winning Bathurst and getting out, he stalls the thing, and just they haven't been able to restart it. Because I understand from a few people, Jason Bright said this. I think whether it was on the show or just privately, but Jason Bright was saying that the E85 fuel that they're using at the moment, the cars are very rough at sort of low revs, and are a lot harder to get off the line than they used to be. So he said they are prone to stalling them more than they used to. Trent, you were obviously in Japan at Fuji, but were you getting any sort of coverage or any news from Bathurst? Did anybody in Japan really care about Bathurst at all?
Well, I was sort of secretly watching it on a stream while the race was going on, and then darting in and out. But I was sitting actually next to Gary Watkins, who's the WEC reporter for Autosport, and he was sort of bemoaning about British touring car racing, and I was sort of bemoaning about V8 supercars, how they sort of bit beyond the realm of what is acceptable under our system, and he was bemoaning how British touring cars are unacceptable outside the MSA. But it was funny, I actually caught when Morris went off into the wall. I thought, well, how many guys have won Bathurst after sticking it into the wall? But I thought it was pretty interesting how they jumped to his defence straight away when he said, the circuit's breaking up. I was like, well, that was at the apex, and he was about a quarter of a mile away from the apex when he went off.
The thing was, they all sort of hit the wall. I mean, Jason Bright once again tweeted later, "I know where I went wrong. I didn't hit the bloody wall."
Yeah.
I mean, how that Nissan finished. I mean, it was literally held with string and and gaffer tape, but. And that was it. Let's we'll move on from Bathurst. We might go back to it in a second. But as we said, Trent, you were at Fuji, and I haven't caught up with much. I caught up with sort of little bits that we ran on the show earlier in the night. Tried to give some idea of what was going on. It's very hard to get footage, to get any decent footage from the World Endurance Championship. They do a media, they do a news feed, but unfortunately, because of the involvement of a company called IMG, you've got to pay about $25,000 if you actually want it and use it. So we sort of picked it up through sort of Toyota and Audi. I mean, they sent out their own sort of news feeds, and we cobbled together something out of that. But what was that like as a race? It looked certainly a good race, and sort of everyone had to turn in the lead at some stage.
Well, initially, yeah. Mark, he qualified on the front row and very nearly got pole in the Porsche. It's got very good one lap pace, that car. Unfortunately, I was standing at turn 1 for most of practice and qualifying, and it really does break traction a lot. So it's not very kind on its tyres. He had a bit of a go at the start around the outside of Buemi, who naturally is going to hang him out to dry. Did that, managed to get in front for a little bit, but once it was sort of over, the Toyota started sort of sprinting away a little bit. The Audi, because they run a 4 megajoule hybrid system, the Porsche run a 6, and then the Toyotas run an 8. The simple version of that is that on a track like Fuji, where you've got a lot of long, constant radius corners and long straights, the Toyota can really stretch its legs, and in traffic, it's not an issue for it. Whereas the Audi, if they get stuck in traffic, it's basically screwed in the first of the race. So they were very much behind the 8 ball, whereas Porsche, Mark got a puncher very early on in the piece, even though he was holding station behind the Toyota Buemi straight away. But once he got the puncher, they thought, we'll try and double stint the tyres, but I don't know why they would even try to do that, because given the braking traction they had, they were just burning through tyres, so that didn't work. So it was really just the Toyota 1-2. It was really just which Toyota was going to win, or if it was going to break. Which they have done a lot this year, but I think they've sorted out their gremlins, so it was really just a matter of which Toyota, and ended up being Davidson and Buemi.
Well, certainly Porsche, probably acknowledge the fact that the car isn't exactly isn't exactly perfect by the fact that they're going to build another car next year. Did you hear anything at all while you were there about the Nissan push next year? There are all sorts of bizarre rumours going around. The latest one being that it will actually be a front-engined car, a la the Paynos, and that it'll be considerably narrower at the rear than it is at the front. So, was there anything going around there about what the Nissan might look like next year?
Not really. I mean, all of these things that are getting thrown up are sort of, part of them are being thrown up by Nissan themselves just to confuse everyone. But the thing that surprised me the most is that they haven't even, well, we don't know if they've built the car, but as far as we know, they haven't built the car yet, and they're going to say, well, we're going to pants everyone. I spoke to Andreas Seidel, the team manager at Porsche, and I thought, well, you guys have been pretty humble this year about everything you've been doing, so look, if we get a few front rows, and poles, we're pretty happy. And then Nissan are coming out and say, well, we're going to destroy everyone. And I said, oh, that's for them to say, we do what we do. So, look, no one really knows. I think it's good, though. Someone's got to come out and start talking about, like, Muhammad Ali and see if they can stir the pot a bit. Create some good exposure anyway.
Well, they're very, very good at that thing. I mean, sort of Darren Cox is certainly not one to hide his hide his light under a bushel or anything like that. The year a couple of years ago when they debuted and sponsored the Delta Wing at Le Mans, you would have thought as you were walking around Le Mans that not only were they sponsoring the race, but also that they were coming back to defend their 13 or 14 win or something. I mean, they did a great job for a car, and I'm just worried with all this talk about it being they've said it's going to be a very experimental design. Just wondering whether it's going to be experimental as in, this will be a genuine breakthrough for LMP1 design, or whether it's just going to be different for the sake of being different and to generate a lot of media interest and a lot of controversy, but won't actually be competitive.
You do wonder, but Nissan don't stuff around. They do everything properly, and that's probably what's rooting me in the fact that they have got something pretty special. But having said that, the way the rules are, you'd think, Audi they've been caught out this year. They're the specialists of these kind of technology, and they've been doing it for so long, and they've actually been caught out. They're saying that, we didn't want to go up to the next megajoule category, but they're going to have to. And I think they will, unless they're planning something special themselves. But I don't know. To be honest, I think the way the rules are as well, they've made it too competitive. I mean, I like when we go to see a race, like a running race with Usain Bolt. No one bemoans the fact that he's beat everyone by a country mile. They just go to see Usain Bolt and go, oh wow, what an incredible performance. But the way the rules, they almost constrain these cars. I think the technology is there to absolutely destroy Formula One in terms of speed, but politics, whatever, competitiveness, it's holding them back. So in that respect, I almost see Nissan, they've sort of something. So I don't know what it is, but it could be surprised.
What was the atmosphere like at Fuji in terms of the crowd? The Japanese have always liked their sports car racing. Was it a good crowd? And how do you think it's going?
I didn't see exact figures. I mean, Saturday was a little bit quiet. Sunday, the stands were packed. But when I left on Saturday night, that was about 9 o'clock at night, and it was dark. There were fans camped out in sleeping bags out the front, and this was a cold night, just to get good seats for the next day. And when we arrived the next day, people had just taped off with masking tape areas in the seating just to reserve their own spots that they wanted. It was that hardcore. You could not move. I was trying to take photos. I had to climb on top of about 10 Japanese just to get a shot that I wanted. And it was
not very tall. I mean, you wouldn't have got up very high.
No, I wouldn't have to go very high, but there was enough of them to climb over. But it was qualifying itself. That was a tight affair, and it was absolutely electric. They were just cheering, and people were going absolutely berserk in the stands. And you don't see that at a Formula One event, and they know if someone really obscure, GT down the grid. Richard Bradley, who's not that well known around the world. There were people with banners and flags made out just for him, and he came out like he was visibly shocked. Like, at these people, they latch onto someone incredibly obscure because they know their motorsport. There's a massive difference there.
It's like the wrestling fans in Australia years ago when the WWF, as it was, they came out to Australia. They were expecting people to turn up with banners and signs for Hulk Hogan and Randy Macho Man Savage and all the rest of it. And instead, the number one most popular person in Australia was a guy called Barry O, who I don't think ever won a match in his life. And everybody just loved Barry O, and the rest of the WWE guys were scratching their head going, hey, what the hell's going on here? They didn't get the they didn't get the gag. I mean, it was so obscure. But you do get that. You get that at Le Mans, and there is a real passion. And I think when you listen to Radio Le Mans and you go on all the forums and all the rest of it, you see just how there's a sense of ownership and a sense of people really are a part of the community, that sort of endurance racing community. So, which I think is what excites me. What didn't excite me on the weekend, and this will come as no surprise to anybody, was Formula One at Sochi. Rob, you're the Formula One expert. Defend your category. I mean, that was awful.
I wasn't a very good Formula One commentator watching the race. I'll say that much. There was a lot of distracted, slanderous conversation about all sorts of offensive topics to try and stir some interest within. I think we had a household of about 5 dudes in their 20s. So just imagine just the filth that would have come out of that. I can't defend it. It was dreary. It was boring. Like, the circuit was really impressive. I'll give it that. When you looked at it, when the telecast begun, and when you saw sort of the helicopter shots over the circuit, wow, from the future. This is like 23rd century sort of stuff. But I mean, turn 3 was awesome. I think that battle between John-Eric Verne and Kevin Magnussen through that section, it reminded me a little bit of sort of if Formula One ever bothered with an IndyCar race around an oval, because it was sort of just this oval banked sort of style, but in a very miniature sort of setting, and that was pretty cool. That was about it. So that's one defence for Formula One at the Russian Grand Prix this weekend. I think it was quite amusing seeing. I think the thing that amused me the most was the cutaways to our eternal leader Vladimir Putin with Bernie Ecclestone in the grandstands, and the first shot only had Vladimir and Bernie in the grandstands, and then 5 minutes later, someone must have told them, get the rent-a-crowd in because no one's sitting around us. So, and then 5 minutes later, there was just a sea of people sitting in the grandstands. It was just, but honestly, someone described it to me as if this was akin to watching the Berlin Games and Adolf Hitler trying to interact with all the athletes very awkwardly, sort of asking questions. I'm probably going to get a lot of trouble for saying that, but I said it. It was just very, very bizarre. I found it. Formula One likes to stay away from the political side of things in terms of real politics, the stuff that actually matters. But I found it very uncomfortable when we had a lot of emphasis placed on, Vladimir Putin hanging around with Bernie Ecclestone. My colleague Michael Amanado remarks, Formula One doesn't need this. Doesn't need this image of Bernie Ecclestone hanging out with old mate Putin at the Russian Grand Prix. It was bizarre.
I was just surprised that that Vladimir didn't sort of commandeer the second Marussia and end up running and sort of being, and surprise being the only finisher in the end. I mean, that would have been the perfect thing for him because he does have Formula One experience.
Exactly. He'd be the only guy with qualified with a super license with 0 kilometres of testing under his belt. Yeah, it was a weird race. It's one I'd like to forget. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think so. Andrew, what did you think of it? Did you watch it at all? Andrew's speechless.
I watched a bit of it and then I fell asleep. But I watched the start of it. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. We can hear you.
Can you hear me? There could be a bit of a lag, mate. Oh, okay, good. Yeah, no, I saw the start, but then I fell asleep. The track did look wonderful, but yeah, it just wasn't a great spectacle. So I decided to call it quits early and go to bed.
Yeah, it was a bit like that. I managed to stay up. I mean, it held my interest, I suppose, through the end. But it did look it did look $1 million in terms of the track. And but like I said on the report tonight on the show, it probably said the fact that Rosberg sort of stormed back through and finished second probably said a lot more about the total domination of Mercedes than anything to do with the great driving of Rosberg. I mean, they're clearly still in a league of their own. I mean, even with the improved performance of Williams on these faster tracks, it's Formula Mercedes and then the rest.
Well, that's true. I mean, we discussed this on the show on Sunday night as well. If you look at the intra-team battle, if you look at, to use a political analogy, preferences, at least psychologically, Lewis Hamilton is starting to really eke at Nico Rosberg. I mean, Rosberg was quite sort of, I just wasn't fast enough in qualifying. He wasn't really. It was just like, where's the passion, Nico? Where is this? Where's the fire that you've got? I mean, this is one of the big criticisms about Nico, is that he's sort of in that same league as Jenson Button. He's a little bit too cool for school in some respects. He sort of just goes with the flow of it, whereas Lewis Hamilton wears his heart on his various tattoo sleeves on his arm, and it's working at this point in the season. Paul Morris and Chaz Mostert probably. Didn't have the best start to their Bathurst 1000. They ended up winning the thing towards the end. Lewis Hamilton hasn't had the best start to his 2014 campaign, and he's in the hot seat at the moment to really... I mean, we've only got what? We've got America, we've got Brazil and Abu Dhabi, and Hamilton is in the lead for the second consecutive race in Formula 1 this year. It's only happened once, and that was at the Spanish Grand Prix, and Rosberg led for most of it, but that's academic at the moment. He doesn't lead it now. So Rosberg really has to step up his game for the next few races. Otherwise he's serving an open goal to a potential world championship. To be honest,
it seems that he's still suffering big time from the Spa thing. I mean, he was sort of mea culpa. I'm just so sorry. I did the wrong, and. Since then, he just hasn't, and it seems to have fired up Lewis as well. I mean, it's like they almost, when they came together, it was like transferring superpowers from each other.
Yeah, I mean, the way I see it, Rosberg's almost been neutered from being the gutsy racing driver. I think he wanted to show, look, I can be as Dick Dastardly as everybody else on the grid, like my teammate Lewis. Not that Lewis is that extreme with his driving, but if you compare the two, Rosberg's far more cooler behind the wheel than Hamilton, and even psychologically behind the wheel, they're a bit different. Lewis has just found an inner calm, and it's worked for once. I mean, we saw the spat in Monaco, and I thought, oh, here we go again. This is going to be straight out of the history books again, with Lewis sort of losing his mojo with the team and the team falling out of favour with him. But he's made it work for whatever reason. I was speaking with Lewis's former trainer, and he said at the Austrian Grand Prix when Lewis just had a disastrous qualifying session, he called him up and said, Lewis, what are you going to do? Are you disappointed or anything? And he's like, no, you know what, this is going to be a chance for me to do something great. And he did, because at the start of that race back in Austria, he leapt up from, ninth on the grid or something, and was fighting for the lead with Rosberg, I seem to recall. And, I've said this on the show numerous times this season, that I think this is Hamilton's best season in Formula One possibly ever. Not best in terms of results or any sort of consistency, but I think it's more or less, not even his driving has been that outstanding, but it's just the way he's gone about it. His attitude has changed. It's different to his title in 2008. It's different to his defence era in 2009. I think this is a really solid year for Hamilton. I think history will show that in the end, especially if he takes out the title. That will just completely, sort of ignore the rest of the races that went on in the past season, and the championship will will ultimately, shut up the critics of Hamilton this year?
So I was going to say, in Suzuka, Lewis was actually saying, someone asked him, they said, in one of the Mercedes media sessions, they go like, what's different to your driving now than it was when you won your championship? And he said, then I was driving purely on instinct, whereas now I'm calmer and I'm thinking about my driving a bit more. He thought that was the main thing. He said before then, it was a blur. 2007 to him was almost like a blur. Everything was done on instinct, which I guess when you go back and think about all the crazy decisive moves he was making in races, it was very instinctual, and it was probably surprised a lot of the guys who were sort of a bit, I don't know, laissez-faire or sort of a little bit bored of the way things were sort of going on, and he caught them all by surprise. But you can't do that forever. So he seems to think, there's definitely been a change within himself.
We've got a question, Rob, from Frosty, who was just saying here, with Lotus changing engine suppliers next year and Alonso signing the deal with Honda, is there a chance that both would end up at Lotus?
For a Lotus, Mercedes, Honda sort of threesome going on there. One car's powered by Mercedes, one powered by Honda. I'm surprised, Fernando has been linked to buying out, the commercial rights to IndyCar for all we know. He's been linked to every single sort of possible combination out there in the world. He's probably going to be racing some sort of wildcard entry at next year's Bathurst for all we know with Ferrari, Lotus, Cosworth for all we know.
Don't get that started. Auto Action will run that. That'll take over from the Paul Newman to race at Bathurst scenario that we had for 25 years, every year, regular as clockwork, around sort of, early August, early September, Paul Newman to race at Bathurst. And I think 4 years after his death, they were still suggesting that he might turn up and do something somewhere.
Yeah, with Rodney Dangerfield and animatronics, it'll be one hell of a race. I'd love to see that. As for Alonso's future, I still maintain that it's a McLaren future. I don't see the logic of him leaving Ferrari when he's so uncomfortable with not having won a title or much in the way of success over at Ferrari since in the past four and a bit years. If he's going to go to Lotus, who are in all sorts of dire straits financially behind the scenes, they're no Caterham by any stretch of the imagination, but they're not doing that well. It's not going to take Alonso just waltzing in, going, all right, I'll show you, Pastor Maldonado, what I can do. It's not going to be as simple as that. So I think Fernando wants to go somewhere where he's got a really solid team, and he knows McLaren. He knows that they can do it. He knows this time round he hasn't got Lewis, the young upstart, to really get in his way. The Honda thing is a breath of fresh air for Formula One. It's a breath of fresh air for McLaren, and it could be the sea change that Alonso wants. And having said that, a lot of people are sort of very cluey people have latched on the fact that Sebastian Vettel hasn't exactly said he's going to Ferrari either. The rumours look like that is going to be the case, but it's not completely out of the question to see Sebastian ending up at Honda as well. I don't think emotionally he would be at McLaren, if that makes sense. I think he would go to Ferrari based on the sentiment of his idol Michael Schumacher and trying to emulate that success. I mean, he's halfway there with his tally of world titles. Why does he just try to emulate that and at Ferrari instead? But Fernando at Lotus, nice try. I'd love to see him go for a third crack at the team in Enstone, but no, I don't think third time's the charm for Alonso over at Enstone headquarters. I think we'll see him in the McLaren next year, but I could be wrong.
I think also the fact that Ron Dennis is back having so much to do with the team is going to bring him back. They've worked together in the past, and although they had some problems, I think that they respect each other, and I think that he will. And their car, I mean, hasn't been brilliant, but it hasn't been really bad as well. I think that and obviously they've got the with the Honda engine. I suppose that's going to be the $1 million question: is how reliable that thing will be. Look, we've just pretty much come towards the end of it all now. Just if we have any more comments coming up, Trent, just quickly from Fuji and the World Endurance Championship. What's the next round there?
Shanghai in
Yes.
now. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. Another long, similar to Fuji in a way, not as flowing, but long corners, long straights, pretty dull. There's probably one good corner on it, but yeah, probably another Toyota runaway, I'd say.
Actually, you know what? You were speaking earlier, Trent, about Nissan having an unusual design for the sake of it. I think the Lotus LMP1, I think their design department's taken a completely different route by just setting the car on fire.
Yeah, they were. Was it Friday night? I saw them out the back of the garage, and they had an angle grinder to some of their parts just to get the things to fit. And I know they had a water pump problem as well. Going around corners, it actually sounded like someone was running in a go-kart and was behind 5 LMP2 cars, and they just blasted past them on the straight. So it created all sorts of havoc for those guys. I hope they get it sorted, but at the moment it's an uphill battle for those guys. Yeah, they caught fire in pit lane just as I was thinking, oh, they might make it to the end of the race, and then they put it out and then decided, no, I want to end this, and caught fire again.
Yes, it was a bit of a sort of tragic comedy there, watching it go down like that. It's also, I think, a bit of a tragic comedy, the whole sort of privateer LMP1 thing, which clearly just isn't working. I mean, the rebellions were like, it's not just they're a little bit behind; they're 5 and 6 seconds a lap behind. And the ACO have said, next year we are going to make some changes. But the problem is, I mean, they can't make them. They can't make them fast. They can't go too far and make them competitive, because then why the hell are companies like Audi and Toyota and Porsche and Nissan and anybody else who might turn up going to spend all that money on all this wonderful new technology and all this hybrid stuff if somebody can just come in with sort of a glorified kit car and get up and beat them? I mean, is there any future for LMP1's, the privateer section at all, or should they just drop it all and go back to LMP2?
I think they had to go to LMP2 because they're already talking about a new LMP3 class, which is already with Orica and some of the other manufacturers who build LMP2 cars. That's sort of going to screw them around as well, because it's effectively a kit car, and they've done a cost cap on that as well. So they've already built cars for some customers, and it's like, well, now you can't really use these anymore because you're going to be on this bespoke tyre and you're going to be running these regulations. So they're just constantly fiddling with it and not probably talking to the people who are involved and asking what they want to do. But they're very French, and that's the way they do things. And they were the sort of buzzwords of the weekend. It was like, it's all very French at the moment. I won't mention the other.
I think the thing is, if you don't understand it, I mean, the simple thing to say is it's all very French, and they have their own way of doing things, and I think that's the problem. I mean, because it's a bit like the whole IndyCar thing. The brand of WEC is pretty much built around Le Mans. I mean, for most people, they are Le Mans prototypes, and that's the whole thing that keeps that series alive. That's the main reason why everybody's there, is just for that one particular race. So they can just do what, and they have shown that they're always been incredibly independent of what anybody else, and it doesn't really matter how left of centre their ideas might be. It's they'll just jump in and do it all of a sudden, and throw it all in. No, we will start again. I'd be a bit worried, spending all that money, and then sort of they get to 2017, 2018, and they go, no, we don't like that, let's do something else. Andrew's there, and I just realised, I think this weekend at Wakefield Park, we have another Shannon's Nationals, Andrew, and another round of the Formula Fords, I believe.
Yep, that's correct, Brett. They round 4 out of 6 rounds. It's going to be an interesting race, actually. About 2 or 3 weekends ago, there was a state round there where some of the Formula Ford guys had a bit of a run around, and I think the front runners again will be James Golding, who's currently leading the championship, and Jordan Lloyd from Queensland. I think they'll be running up the front. I think there's going to be the grid numbers slightly down for Wakefield. I think they're at about 18 up around 22, but that should increase. I think the next round's at City Motorsport Park. So it's a good track for Formula Ford racing. It's a pretty tight circuit, which suited well to the Formula Ford. So I reckon the racing will be red hot again. But yeah, I definitely think Jordan Lloyd and James Golding will be battling it out again. And I think Tom Randall went up there and had a good run as well. So yeah, it's gonna be good, I reckon.
Well, Tom was totally dominant at the Victorian State round just recently. I mean, he came in and just literally ran away. It was very comfortable, very unlikely sort of a very un-Formula Ford-like victory. It was quite comfortable for over the 3 races. So he's obviously in form. Should just point out there will be live streaming from Wakefield Park on Sunday of all the events up there, because sports races, which are fantastic. Speaking of prototypes, the sports races with the Wests and the Stores and those sorts of cars, great little cars. I think they look terrific, sound terrific. They're a great category, and they'll be fabulous at Wakefield Park as well. And there's the Australian Manufacturers Championship is there as well as the V8 touring cars, which is the older V8 supercars. They're just not allowed to call them older V8 supercars because V8 supercars get very upset. But then they're very easy to upset, as Betty Clemenko found yet again on the weekend when she dared to try and tweet a photo of her car in her garage to the outside world, and was pounced on very quickly by the V8 supercar thought police, who said, no, you're not to do that. There are to be no tweets from teams unless they are official V8 supercar tweets. So yeah, it's getting quite ridiculous, and I think if they want to drive Betty away and her money away and into the arms of GT racing, they're certainly going the right way about it. And I'd say probably to Betty, I mean, enjoy yourself. Take those lovely 2 SLS Mercedes and do the 12-hour and go to Spa next year and do the Nürburgring 24 hours and just travel the world and race on wonderful tracks with friendly people and tell V8 supercars to just shove it up their ass, because it's really not worth the hassle. They are an absolute pain to deal with at every level, and they can't, and they don't have the excuse of being French. But anyway, was that?
That was one hell of an editorial, Brett. Rex Hunt would be proud. I think you've got to tape that, send it to kids, inspire them. It's got to go in every single classroom in this country tomorrow. That was amazing. That was great.
Well, it's yeah. I just don't know. I couldn't. Well, a lot of people said they couldn't believe. I could believe it. I mean, that's there, and that's why the Bathurst 12-hour is becoming so popular. I mean, a few people sort of sent me emails and messages on Facebook saying, "Oh, look, this shows you what a fabulous, that it's still such a great race and it's better than your 12-hour shit and all the rest of it." We've had some brilliant finishes to the 12-hour over the last few years that haven't relied on people running out of fuel. It's just been really good racing right to the end, and I defy almost anybody to come from the back of a 50-car grid in the Bathurst 12-hour. I mean, they've got more time to do it. They could, conceivably they could, but I would somehow doubt it. I just think that race is getting stronger and stronger every single year, and it's obviously upsetting a few people within the realm of V8 supercar. And I thought it was wonderful to see that they were plugging it. Seven were plugging it quite heavily during the apart from their digging a hole in the sand extravaganza that is coming up. International World Series Sandcastles or whatever the hell it is. Quality programming from your Australian commercial television, but. But anyway, yes, coming up this weekend, as we said, there is live streaming of Wakefield Park, the Shannon's Nationals. There is a link on the In Pit Lane website. There will also be Saturday night qualifying from Hockenheim from the DTM, and also the race also on Sunday night as well at about, I think it's about 9:30 on Sunday night. Also, European Le Mans Series this weekend. Not sure. Usually is a live stream that we link into somewhere, but certainly it will be covered in full as usual on Radio Le Mans. So, guys, before we say, do we have any last minute? Trent, first of all from you, any last minute plugs?
We'll probably e-racing will probably be out straight after Shanghai, so that'll be 2 weeks time. So yeah, look out for that. I guess we'll be covering the European Le Mans series as well. Maybe a little bit of Asian Le Mans when they can get more than 9 cars to rock up. Yeah.
Yeah, that is becoming a little bit. But I'd like to see that really take. It's got great. You look at it and think it's got potential, but I mean the fact that they keep scheduling the races up against the World Endurance Championship and other, or Super GT or something, or sometimes in the same, is just crazy. If you visit their website, I mean, it's a real worry.
Yeah. I mean, they could have been on the same bill as the 6 hour at Fuji, but they put Formula 3 on instead. So they're not doing it any favours.
No, that's it. I think someone once again sort of there's dollar signs or yen signs or some sort of sign or whatever the sign is, we're behind all that. But Rob, box of neutrals coming up this weekend, this Friday.
Yeah, on 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. on Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time, because we're a national program, so we've got to let our good friends in Perth know to check the Melbourne time for that one. This week's going to be a great one. We had a half an hour chat on Sunday, pre-recorded before our Russian GP preview with former FIA Formula One medical delegate Dr. Gary Hartstein, and we had a good, deep, and meaningful conversation about, of course, the events surrounding Jules Bianchi over in Suzuka. Not sort of the same speculative rubbish that gets thrown around the media, but we're sort of giving that the sort of getting rid of some of the misconceptions out there that are in the press surrounding Jules. But of course, holistically looking at Formula One in general, the advancements in technology and development with regard to safety and medicine inside not just Formula One but involved in motorsport. He's an amazing speaker, and it was riveting radio, and it was a pleasure to speak with Dr. Gary. So we'll have that on ABC Grandstand Digital from this Friday afternoon at 3:30 p.m. and 6:30 p.m. On Friday, but also we'll put up the full chat as well at boxofneutrals.com later this week.
Yeah, his website is really good, and the whole thing, not now with Jules, but also with Michael Schumacher as well. He was one of the people who was has been talking sense, and sometimes isn't particular. That's not particularly welcome from some people. I mean, some of the comments, like in regard to Michael Schumacher, were if you read some of the comments, they're just extraordinary. Some of the things, but I mean, this guy is a doctor, and he's a very experienced doctor, and some of the nonsense that's coming out is worrying to read. But yeah, his website, his blog is worth reading. That'll be something to look forward to and have a listen to this Friday. So thanks for that, Andrew. I'm not sure whether we've got you online there. I've got a very strange logo here which says you don't have a microphone, but let's try it. Anything that you'd like to plug?
Can you hear me?
Yep, there we are.
Yep, I would. Well, we mentioned the Formula Fords racing this weekend as on the Shannon's bill, so that'll be a good one to watch. And the live streaming actually works really, really well. So yeah, I think it's going to be hotly contested this weekend, and the Formula Fords will be back actually. I think in only a couple of weeks' time again at the next round for the Shannon Series. So there's actually three rounds coming up in the next month to finish off the series with the final round as part of the Isle of Magic. And I'll tell you what, that Island Magic round for Formula Ford is going to be massive. Massive. I reckon we're going to be nudging 25 to 30 cars. There's a lot of local state runners that have entered it as well. So yeah, it's going to be a busy month for Formula Ford coming up. So yeah, it's all systems go with Formula Ford at the moment.
Yeah, Island Magic is always, as we always call it, schoolies for petrol heads. It's going to be a great weekend, and the viewers of In Pit Lane should stay tuned, because we've got once again tickets to give away to Island Magic, and also thanks to our friends, our supporters down at the Ramada Resort, Phillip Island, will have another night's accommodation to give away as well. So thanks to Ramada. Once again, thanks to our sponsors of our program, Dyno Tech by Dyno Dynamics. If you're looking for a dyno for your workshop, they're the people to talk to. I hope you enjoyed this weekend. Anybody who's watched it out there, we've had a good chat. Hopefully we'll do this again next week. I haven't had it confirmed yet, but we should have on next week's program on Channel 31 Paul Mathers from Motor Classica. Motor Classica, this thing has just taken off like nobody's business. I mean, when Paul first came onto the show a few years ago, it was a good little idea for a nice little niche market for a classic car show and a Concours d'Elegance, and everyone said, well, it'll be interesting and it should get a nice little crowd. The thing just took off like nobody's business. On the Sunday, we were up on the mezzanine floor at the Royal Exhibition buildings looking down and just going, oh my God, look at these people. And I think that's something perhaps we can talk about next week, just how they've turned that into such a phenomenal success. And what we might be able to, something I want to talk to Paul about is, like in terms of how they've marketed and how they've managed to turn it into this success, to the point where it's outlasted and taken away from the Melbourne and Australian international motor shows, because you're going to have a lot of the new companies like Mercedes, Lotus, Ferrari, all those people are actually going to be exhibiting at Motor Classica with their new cars as well. So it's replaced those things as well. And yeah, obviously coming up this weekend, MotoGP at Phillip Island. Interesting, lots and lots of, because I live down towards that way, the freeway's just up the road. There's lots and lots and lots of bikes going down there already, so that'll be a huge success. And I think the weather forecast, despite what it's like in Melbourne tonight, it's bloody freezing, but I think the weather forecast for the weekend is too really fine, and Sunday is going to be a pretty hot day, up in the high 20s, even early 30s. So yeah, it should be a great weekend down there. So guys, thanks for joining us. Thanks to anybody watching via the In Pit Lane YouTube channel or the Google Plus page. Remember, if you want to contact us, the show at inpitlane.com. But until then, to anybody watching, that's all from the Victory Lap, and hopefully we'll see you again next week. Until then, from all of us, bye for now.